A new set, a new list. Let's get into it. All right, we are back clearly with a new studio setup. So for that, you can thank my editor / my best friend / my wife, who has decided that we're now able to take over a brand new part of the house. So huge shout out to her for that. We're going to be setting stuff up here over the next couple of weeks. But until that time, the show must go on, and we have a great episode lined up for y'all today. But before we do that, as promised, we have to get to the giveaway. So in order to enter the giveaway for the Illumineers quest today, first thing you got to do, just be subscribed to the channel. Just make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and also make sure you drop a like for this video, and also in the comment section, let us know the next Enchanted Rare that you are most excited to pick up for your collection. And with that, let's get into the video. So it is that time again. We get to rank every single Enchanted Rare in Disney's Lorcana. We did do this episode once before. If you didn't see that video, go check that video out. We had so much fun stack ranking different Enchanted Rares all the way up to the #1 card in Disney's Lorcana. So we're gonna do that again, but just wanna call out a few different changes to this variation of what I like to call the Enchanted Mountain. So first and foremost, all of the cards that we're gonna be ranking today all are retail Enchanted Rares. So what does that mean by that? So first and foremost, you have to be able to pull the card. So for example, no promo Enchanted Rares, no Rockstar Stitch, etc. Also, no prize cards. I'm not sure if those are considered Enchanted Rares or not. I don't think that they are. They have a different symbol at the bottom, but I'm talking like Rapunzel, Cinderella from the set championships, or from Atlanta, Chicago, things like that. Can't count those in this as well. It's all gonna be retail Enchanted Rares. And so with that, let's get into this list. So the first thing that I wanna call out in this list are your honorable mentions. And I'm gonna put them up for y'all right here. I mean, basically, this list is just gonna keep getting longer as we keep going through the next iteration of sets in Lorcana. So we were talking about how we're gonna get all of these up on the board. So we're just gonna do it this way for now. And I think over time, it's just gonna become a longer and longer list. But it is important for us that all of these cards are represented on the list, because they deserve to be represented on the list, because they are such important parts of Lorcana history. So as you can see here, here's our list of all of your honorable mentions. It is probably a long list. If you want to be able to pause it, search through them, and kind of see what we have on here before we actually get into the real variation of the Enchanted Mountain, you can do that right now. So also beyond that, I also want to be able to call out a different subcategory of the honorable mention that I'd like to talk about, and that's going to be the songs. So for the songs, I wanted to at least have those be represented. They are not on the mountain, but I at least wanted them to have their own honorable mention category. And the reason I say that is because I think that Disney is in a very unique spot here with the Enchanted Rare songs with Lorcana. Similar to Pokemon and Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh!, you have these different subtypes of cards that aren't necessarily character cards, but they might be item cards or action cards or magic cards or what have you. Songs are very individualistic for the franchise or for the IP, the overarching IP of Disney. And I just think they have something very special there. And also these cards are extremely, extremely great value right now. I think with Along Came Zeus being the #1 card, I'll pop that price up right there for you. But I believe besides Along Came Bruce, and maybe we don't talk about Bruno, the others are right now currently under $100. I think that's phenomenal value going forward. Again, that's not what the entire list is about. Obviously, we want to talk about what are the most sought after cards, or the cards that are the most collectible in Disney Lorcana, but I do think it's important to at least call these cards out before we get into the actual mountain. All right, so getting into our first tier, we're gonna call this tier Strong Value Tier. What I mean by this is, first and foremost, this is a tier that is worthy of being on the mountain, which is in and of itself a great feat. But I also have this tier highlighted in green, and you might see me do this as videos go on where we keep ranking cards on the Enchanted Mountain. I want to be able to also give y'all not just a stack ranking of what I think the most sought after Enchanted Rares are, but also is now a good time to buy. At the end of the day, this is a collection journey that we're on together, and I also want to be able to provide you value on, just because this card is so high up the list, does that mean that you should be picking this card up right now? Because a lot of times those two things don't work together. Sometimes they actually contradict. But for this specific tier, I actually think it's a phenomenal time to be picking up any of these cards for your collection. So let's quickly talk about each one of them. So for starters, we have Maui. When I think about Maui, I think about a short-term success story that could stem from the newest upcoming movie that's about to be released, Moana 2. Someone in the comments let me know specifically when that movie is. I always do that. I did this last time with Frozen 3. I ended up knowing that it's coming out, but I don't know when it's released. So I'm sure someone in the comments will let me know that. Thank you very much for that. But what I do know is that the trailer was just recently released, and it broke some sort of record for like most viewed trailer in Disney animated history, something like that. Nevertheless, people love Moana. It's a phenomenal franchise, and I do think you could see short-term appreciation for Maui just from a price spike standpoint, which brings us to other things about the Moana Enchanted Rare, which I feel like is inevitable at some point. But I'm going to slot Maui in there just because it's got a few good themes going for it. It's a first chapter Enchanted Rare. Also, we have the Moana 2 arc that we're kind of playing off of, so I like Maui there. Moving in to Snow White and Cinderella. This one's very simple. This one's just kind of a situation where we have our princess tax, where I think they're just being a little bit undervalued, especially Cinderella. I think Cinderella, this specific variant of Cinderella, is getting wildly underappreciated just for the simple fact that we already have a variation of this Cinderella that has already been printed in the form of Cinderella Ballroom Sensation from Rise of the Floodborn. Because of this, I think it's getting a little bit of headwind kind of thrown against it, just because it's kind of like, oh, it's the second Enchanted Cinderella in 4 sets. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it is a Disney princess, and I do think that we are going to see both short and long-term price appreciation for this card. It's just right now, it's just getting bogged down a little bit from the fact that there's maybe other meta-relevant cards that happen to be enchanted that we might talk about a little bit later. And also, again, with there being multiple variants of Cinderella from an enchanted perspective, I think those things are just working against it right now. But be on the lookout for this card to probably appreciate in the near future. And then we finally get to what I'd like to talk about with Simba and Anna. So let's first get Simba out of the way, because I think Anna's a little bit more of a diverse, interesting one. So Simba just comes down to the simple fact that it's first chapter. And also, it is kind of one of the most iconic franchises in Disney. Like when I think of like my nostalgia growing up, and maybe it is just my nostalgia, but I just think Lion King is such a massive franchise that, again, that along with the first chapter theme, Simba's around $130 right now, I believe, on TCG Player. And I just think that that's wildly undervalued right now. So if you do want to pick up Simba, now could be a good time to do that. And then looking at Anna, this one is an extremely interesting one, because I was having a conversation with one of my friends the other day talking about this idea of, is Anna actually a Disney princess? My interpretation would be that this is family, sister of Elsa's. So I would look at this as, yes, that makes her a princess, right? Elsa is the Disney princess right now. So how can Anna not also sort of fall under that category? Also, Anna being a part of the Frozen franchise, as we know, another movie coming out, more content coming out on Frozen. Over time, this Frozen franchise is most likely going to be one of the best money revenue generators for Disney going forward, because it's got everything going for it, right? It makes money for Disney. It makes money for the talent who represents the franchise of Disney. So I'm talking about like the artists, the illustrators, the voiceover characters, all of those individuals. And then also, most importantly, it's great for us, right? We all love Frozen. So over time, I don't see content stopping for Frozen anytime soon, and Anna is going to reap the benefits for that. So I like Anna at this value right now, especially with the first set coming out. I like her at this around 170, 175 price point. So if you want to be able to go pick up Anna, now could be a good time to do that. Moving on, next tier, Perfectly Sound. So again, from an investment standpoint, just kind of riding off of this theme, it kind of just worked out this way for the Mountain this week. But these cards I would put on the Mountain as being where they deserve to be from a credibility, from a collectability perspective. But at the same time, I also look at them from a value perspective as they're appropriately priced. Like if you want to go pick yourself up Mickey Wayward Sorcerer, that is an iconic character from the first chapter. And it is, you know, sort of the mascot of any type of broom card, broom deck, Fantasia type deck that you might be trying to put together for yourself. So I like Mickey a lot. Now, that being said, Mickey's extremely expensive. You know, he's around $250, something like that, $250, somewhere in there. Honestly, that's a little bit wide of a range there, but I do know that he is sort of up in that next tier before we start to get to other cards that we'll talk about. But at the same time, I think that that's warranted. Same with Ariel. Obviously, Ariel being one of the big chase cards from the newest set of Ursula's Return. I like Ariel at this price point just because it's a warranted price point for a Disney princess, especially such an iconic Disney princess that is the key protagonist for the crescendo of this first saga, that of the first chapter to Ursula's Return, against that antagonist, which is Ursula. So love the card, love the artwork, love the protagonist aspect, love the Disney princess aspect. Yeah, she's expensive, but at the same time, I think that that's warranted. Giant Tink, same thing. Such an iconic, unique spin on such a classic Disney character. Everyone is loving Giant Tink right now, whether it be from a meta perspective or just from an artwork perspective, right? The newest playmats that they use, they decided to go with the super rare variant of Tink. And then at the same time, Tink also is extremely meta relevant. Over time, all cards will fade from existence from the meta. I mean, unless you have some type of like one-for-one universal like board wipe, like Be Prepared, things like that. Like those cards really only get retired because of a card that just flat out mechanically beats it, like maybe a lower ink cost to be able to perform a similar action with the same ink being Ruby, something like that. Or it's just going to be the ban list that takes Be Prepared out. But nevertheless, cards like that, I mean, even cards like that, they always do get retired, and Giant Tink will be no exception, whether it's just better tack coming out that will eliminate Tink from your deck, or being, you know, banned, something like that. Again, time comes for all cards when it comes to the meta and it comes to meta relevancy. But again, I don't think that that will really hurt this card. I think that this card has a great, unique niche in Lorcana history. Again, being one of the first cards from the first chapter, not necessarily being a princess, but being a very popular female character in the Disney franchise. I like Giant Tink. So all of these cards going together from Ariel to Giant Tink, you know, to also Snow White, who I think is a good, not Snow White, Alice, who I think is a very good card right now. All of these cards I would pretty much put in the perfectly sound area, just again, because I believe that if they keep running any further, it might be time to kind of slow up and reassess what you think from a value standpoint on them. However, for right now, I think all of their values are very justified here. So I've got them right in this middle tier of being perfectly sound. Moving up the list, moving up the mountain, we have our next three cards, which we're gonna call this tier Overheating. And again, sticking with that theme from a value perspective, it kind of seems like as we're moving up the list here a little bit, we're kind of finding that cards are running a little bit hotter than you might prefer for being able to pick them up right now. Different reasons why this is happening. Let's start with the easiest one. Diablo right now is, first and foremost, absolutely phenomenal artwork, but nevertheless, this Diablo variant is right now, quite simply, the most meta relevant card in Disney Lorcana. And because of that, that has helped driving the price up. Now, again, that doesn't mean that when it falls out of meta relevancy, it's gonna take a haircut by 50% and it's gonna go from being a $275, $280 card to, you know, $130, $135 card. That's not it at all. But at the same time, I do think you will see a hit on this card because once we leave meta relevancy within the actual TCG, within the game, we start to kind of search for, like, where is that, what's that key thread that we can pull on to say, like, this is why this card is going to kind of hold its water, hold its weight, and sustain that price. We don't have any first chapter or first ever set that we can pull on. We don't have any Disney princess tax that we can pull on. We don't have, you know, any hero tax that we can pull on, like, say, maybe like a Maui or a Simba, a Mickey. We just don't have any of those things that we can pull on. So I do think medium term, because I do think short term you're going to see Diablo hold its weight because of the meta relevancy. I think medium term you will see that dip where you're going to be able to go get in and get one of these cards if you want to. And then of course, just like every single Enchanted Rare that we're talking about today, whether it's on the honorable mention list or whether it's on the mountain, long term I like all these cards. I like all of these cards to appreciate long term. But at the same time, we are talking about, is now the right time to go ahead and grab this card? And I think no. I think let this shake out for another 6 months to a year, and just like let's let a couple more sets come out. Let's see how the meta shakes out, and then we'll go in and get this card. But at the same time, absolutely phenomenal card, and if you do have it, you should consider yourself extremely lucky to have this as part of your collection. And if you are playing with it in your deck, just try and be as gentle with it as possible so that you can preserve the authenticity. Well, not the authenticity, but at least the mint condition of it for as long as you possibly can. Moving then into Aurora. There's aspects of Aurora that I get, and then there's aspects of Aurora where I just have to be very to the point and very subjective when we're talking about being more than fair when we're talking about all these cards. So on one hand, I love Aurora from the standpoint that, again, first chapter, Disney Princess, all these threads that I can pull on. So long term, I think that if you have this card, you have something super special that you should be you should be so excited about long term. At the same time, if we look at these cards, sort of how we look at investments, for collectability, we look at them as, for some of y'all out there who are a little bit older, maybe you can look at them as stocks, something like that. The main purpose of what we're trying to do here, along with trying to rank all of these cards, is we're also trying to say, is now a good time to pick them up for your collection? And Aurora is a no, for the simple fact that when we look at buying anything, we want to buy when something's at its lowest and sell when it's at its highest. Using that fundamental principle, right now technically Aurora is a sell. Now that doesn't mean I think you should sell Aurora. I don't think you should. That's the last thing I think you should do. I think you should hold this card long term because, again, you have such an amazing piece of Lorcana history in your hand. But I do think that there might be opportunity to see a dip. And I mean, you could go a few different ways with this. You could go reprints, you could go the fact that you might see a slight dip just from, other cards maybe jockeying for position with it. Again, just as an example, again, Moana 2 comes out, Maui skyrockets, maybe people are selling one thing to pay for another. It's possible. Again, I just think Aurora is slightly overheated. So even though she deserves her spot way up top here, I do think just be cautious of picking it up at this price point, which is around $250. That is quite a bit considering I don't believe this is a top 3 card in the first chapter. So just be a little bit cautious of that at this price point right now. And that leads us to a card that probably does sneak into the top 3 for price point for the first chapter, which is Stitch Carefree Surfer. There is a lot of Stitch love out there, and I am no different. I love Stitch. I watched Stitch all growing up. I have Stitch Carefree Surfer as one of my Enchanted Rares. I made no hesitation picking that up for my collection. I love that card. I am a little worried about Stitch just in the short term. I just want to be able to see the Rockstar Stitch promo card play itself out a little bit more. The reason I say that is because we have 2 Stitch cards jockeying for position, and to be fair, I don't know which one is going to be the highest rarity or the highest investment Stitch. Truth be told, I could actually see Stitch Carefree Surfer long term being worth more than Enchanted Rockstar Stitch. I really could. Just because of running off of this idea that it is an extremely difficult, extremely nostalgic card to pull from the first set ever. I think a lot of that is just going to come down to how many times they recycle and reprint the first chapter, and we're not really going to know anything like that for years to come. So again, not saying don't pick the card up, but I do feel like I have a duty to kind of say, right now this card is surging in price, rightly so, but it is probably outpacing its stock just a little bit right now. So just keep waiting on Rockstar Stitch in the market and just kind of see if that card keeps working itself down, because there might be a buying opportunity in there for you, but certainly deserves its place this high atop the mountain. Up the mountain we go, and going into the second tier, we are calling this tier quite simply Princess Perfection. Now, if you saw a more recent video that we did that we will also be doing coming up called the Lorcana questions video. If you haven't seen that video, go check that video out because we do a question specifically on these two cards, Cinderella, Ballroom Sensation, and then also Belle, Strange But Special. One of the most unique and fun questions that I've ever gotten, which is, would you rather basically have the best card from the second set or the second best card from the first set? And we kind of break down just a little bit of the logic and ideology of how that might work out. Again, there's really no wrong answer, but if you're forced to answer, like, how would you go about doing that? So we talked about that, but really, I do believe that I ended up finishing the question by saying you can't go wrong either way. Like, either one of these cards, if you have it, you're a winner. I mean, these cards are just so unbelievably stout in the market, and that will not change, regardless of more reprints to the first chapter, and also if they decide that they want to start reprinting Rise of the Floodborn and other secondary key sets outside of the first chapter. These cards are still going to help pace the market, along with the next card, which I'm sure nobody has too many surprises of what's coming next. But those cards are going to continue to be market-setting cards, especially in the retail space, because they are so hard to pull, so hard to get your hands on. Eventually, we are going to pull that Cinderella from Rise of the Floodborn, or at a bare minimum, we're going to get it in our collection if we can't pull it after hundreds of blisters. But that exactly right there kind of proves the point, right? They're such iconic, such highly sought-after cards, and they're not very easy to get your hands on in terms of like, oh, well, I'll just pull the card, right? Again, we talked about a different video, the Pokemon vs. Lorcana video, and if you haven't seen that video, you can see a breakdown of how easy or difficult it might be to pull, say, a base set Charizard versus how difficult it might be to pull first chapter Elsa out of X amount of packs, right? When you start to have two iconic Disney princesses like these that are so incredibly hard to come by and so incredibly loved in the Disney space, you're going to have a concoction that just makes for absolute perfection when you talk about nostalgia, collectability, credibility. So I don't have anything on these cards in terms of, you know, it's a value time. They're running too hot. These cards deserve to be right where they are. That's probably never going to change. They're wonderful cards for your collection, and that's probably not going to change for forever. And moving into the number one card on the mountain, it should come as no surprise that the tip of the iceberg is, of course, Elsa. Now, Elsa's an interesting one, and let's take this from a value perspective, because from a collectability perspective, should she be on top of the mountain? I think this might, I think quite literally, this card might be a card that I could ask 100 Disney Lorcana enthusiasts, like, hey, what's the most sought after enchanted retail rare? Retail Enchanted Rare, sorry, right now, and I think 100 out of 100 are going to say Elsa. This card is just the market-setting card, and it's by a wide margin. I think it's probably right now triple, not quite quadruple, but probably just a little over triple the next most expensive Enchanted, which I do believe is Cinderella Ballroom Sensation. And again, that delta is probably not going to change anytime soon. So let's take it more from a value perspective, and if you should be picking up this card right now. Potentially we could do another video on this altogether. If you do want to see a video on that, let me know in the comments section. I mean, I could riff on Elsa easily. We could find 10-15 minutes of content to riff on Elsa, so that could be something that we put in the queue for a future episode, so just let me know on that. But from a value perspective, it's hard for me to say that this card isn't a good value right now. Now I'll explain, because on one hand it's very difficult to call a card that's around $1,000 right now on the secondary market a good value right now. But at the same time, I have to take this from a perspective that they did just reprint the first chapter not too long ago. I don't know when that second reprint is going to be happening. For all I know, it could be a couple months from now, and for all I know, it could be a couple years from now. It could be even further along the line from that. I haven't heard anything about it. If someone has in the comments, please let me know. But in my world, I have to take it as, if they're not talking about it, there's no rumors swirling about it, I have to take it from a standpoint of like, this is probably a good dip in the market to go grab this card. I don't know that you're going to see this card below 800, 7, like, I don't know that you're going to see it there anytime soon. But what I do know is that especially with the Lorcana challenge events going on right now, with the store championship promos going on, Rockstar Stitch, the future Ursula card that's going to be coming out. You also have these prize cards like the Cinderella, like the Rapunzel, technically the Golden Mickey, all of these cards kind of, flooding the market to be able to have some sort of other spotlight and FOMO to be able to go chase after these specific cards. This does leave Elsa just a little bit off to the sidelines right now, and I don't want to say forgotten because that's certainly not the case, but I do think it's a card that right now it probably is a good time to go grab this asset if you are thinking about picking it up for your collection. So really it just comes down to, you can either wait for a little bit longer for a reprint or for maybe a little bit more FOMO with future non-retail enchanted or prize cards coming out. You can do that and see if you can trickle down a little bit more. But if you want to go pick up this card, I think it's a fantastic time to do it. And look, even if you do get it just before a dip, just understand that if you're holding this card long term, you have yourself something that is so special in the Disney Lorcana TCG that you don't have anything to worry about in the sense of like, oh, I wonder if this card will continue to be a super valuable card. That's sort of already set in stone in this TCG. As long as the hobby itself keeps pushing forward, this card will be right at the front, helping do the same thing. So Elsa, very worthy, up top at number 1. All right, y'all, so that's gonna do for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning into the content. Make sure that you're liked, commented, and subscribed to the channel so you have the opportunity to get in on the giveaway, the Ursula's A Lumineer's Quest. Until then, we will see you all on the other side. We are eternally grateful for you all. Peace out.